At Forex.com, you can take your investment strategy beyond borders
and trade the world's leading currencies 24 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Go to Forex.com today, open a free practice account,
and experience the excitement of OTC currency trading risk-free.
Go to Forex.com and start trading currencies today.
There are some small surprises that have just come out of the budget, but in the main, they're all within the confines of what we expected. So, for example, capital gains tax has gone up, and that's not good news, but it's not gone up by as much as we feared. It's gone up to 28% for higher rate taxpayers, and also the entrepreneurs' tax relief has gone up to £5 million. So in the first £5 million, entrepreneurs only pay 10% capital gains tax. So that's a slight surprise. It's not exactly what people feared, but in the main, it's what was expected. Same thing with value-added tax. It's gone up to 20%, or going up to 20% at the start of next year. Again, that was a general consensus view of what would happen. So obviously it's a massive story, but it's not really unexpected. Same thing with the bank tax. It's going to raise probably £2.5 billion a year. It's going to be a tax on balance sheets. Once again, we sort of expected that. So I think, you know, the general parameters and a lot of the details are quite close to what was expected, but obviously we now know the real details about all of these policies. And I think Osborne's main aim was to try and have about 80% or so of the fiscal consolidation to come from reduced spending and about 20% to come from higher taxes. He's almost managed that. I think it's going to be 73%, 27%. Right, not perfect, but most of the consolidation is coming from lower spending. There's going to be very tight spending rounds for all the departments, and there's going to be a lot of reductions in some welfare benefits, as well as a looming reform of the whole welfare system. So it's a very tight budget when it comes to spending. I think that's quite welcome. That's what people wanted. And it's good to see that not all of the burden will fall on departments. Some of it will also fall on welfare. The new levy is basically a levy on banks' balance sheets, on the balance sheets of all banks based in the UK, or at least all the big banks based in the UK, including the subsidiaries of foreign banks. Now, the devil is going to be in the detail. We don't know. Osborne said that some of the smaller banks will be exempt, and as we found out with the last bank tax, there's a huge debate as to what really is a bank and what is something else. But clearly the industry is going to have to pay quite a lot. This fee hits balance sheets, but you can exclude from the fee deposits, Tier 1 capital and various other forms of capital. So the aim in a way is to try and penalise a little bit what is deemed to be slightly riskier forms of financing for banks. The problem is all of the big banks are being hit, even though they were never bailed out and they wish to behave prudently. So, for example, HSBC will be hit by the tax even though it never received a bailout. Barclays, same thing, and so on. So it's not just RBS and Lloyds that are paying. So it's quite an indiscriminate tax. And also, it just raises the cost of doing business for banks in the UK, even though the UK needs to continue to attract banks in the city if the city is to continue to thrive. And I think, and the final point on this banking tax is basically the tax is going to be passed on to consumers and to other customers. So, for example, if you tax investment banks, investment banking fees will go up. If you tax banks that are primarily involved in consumer banking, then the spreads, the margins that these banks charge their customers will go up. Interest rates will go up slightly. The return on deposits will go down slightly. All that to pay for this tax. Taxes aren't free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Even when you tax the banks, someone has to pay in the end, and that's the consumer and other businesses. I think that all the fiscal plans unveiled in the budget show a return to a balanced budget, at least a balanced structural budget, in 4 or 5 years' time. And that's, if the government actually applies that, implements these plans, and it all works out as expected, then that's exactly what the city wants to see. That's quite a prudent medium-term strategy. So yes, I think it's good news when it comes to the city, but the city and investors were worried about two things in particular. They were worried about the bank tax, because a bank tax that hits only UK-based banks, as the one which Osborne unveiled will do, is obviously bad for UK competitiveness. Also, the increase in capital gains tax, that's not good for investors at all. It will hit the private equity industry and hedge funds, venture capitalists and so on, and they're going to pay quite a lot more tax. So those two things are bad news for the city and bad news for Britain's competitiveness. But the macroeconomic picture, which is a sharp reduction in the budget deficit and ultimately a reduction in the national debt as a share of GDP, that's good news, and that will reassure the markets.
Go to Forex.com and start trading currencies today.